जैसा कि मैंने आपको पहले ही कहा था कि हमारे बीच हैं चेयरमैन ड्राफ्टिंग कमेटी राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के डॉक्टर कृष्ण स्वामी कस्तूरीरंगन जी। मैं उनको आमंत्रित करूंगी कि वो आएं और अपनी बात कहें।
Namaskar. Good afternoon. On this memorable occasion, when the Honorable Prime Minister has given a clarion call for the transformation of Indian education, I would like to extend my warm greetings to each and every one of you. The National Education Policy 2020. Sri Dharmendra Pradhan ji was here and will be coming. The Honorable Ministers of States of the Government of India, the Honorable Education Ministers of the Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, Sri Sanjay Murthy ji, Secretary, Government of India, academics, administrative and institutional leaders from universities and institutes of national importance, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to warmly compliment the organizers of this important meet, led by the dynamic chairman of the UGC, the University Grants Commission, Professor Jagdish Kumar, and Vice Chancellor of Banaras Hindu University,
आप सभी से विनम्र अनुरोध है, सभी विद्वज्जन अपने स्थान ग्रहण कर लें। सेशन चल रहा है।
Professor Sudhish Jain, who until recently was shaping in a very effective way the IIT Gandhinagar. There could not have been a better site for this historic occasion in Indian education than Kashi. Kashi has been the seat and engine of knowledge and wisdom since multiple millennia. I am sure this will reflect in the proceedings of our meetings and the conclusions that we will come to. As always, the Honorable Prime Minister has inspired us through his vision and given us direction through his clarity. I must together convert this into a reality. We need to do this, all of us working together on the ground. I am confident that under the energetic leadership of Professor Dharmendra Pradhan ji, guided by Sri Sanjay Murthy and other key leaders, Indian higher education system certainly will truly realize its potential. I shall give a little bit about the policy context. We are truly in the midst of a historic period in Indian education. It is after nearly 34 years that a national education policy was developed. In these years, we have made some progress without doubt. However, equity in and quality of education still remain a massive challenge. While we have established some world-class institutions, we still struggle to create similarly effective learning opportunities and environments for all the youngsters. In these 34 years, the social, political, and economic environment in India and the world have also changed significantly. The economy has opened up, social structures have changed, there is increased participation of all groups in political, social, and economic processes, and communication has grown exponentially. New global challenges such as the climate change have emerged, while rapid changes in technology present both opportunities and challenges to the wellness of the human being. The National Education Policy, NEP 2020, is a transformative response to address all these matters and to prepare Indian youth and India for the 21st century. The process of developing the policy, which began in 2015 under the able guidance of Mrs. Nidhi Irani, resulted in the first version of a draft policy prepared under the chairmanship of late Professor Mr. T.R. Subramaniam, taking due cognizance of the inputs from a large number of consultations, starting from the grassroots level at panchayats, blocks, urban local bodies, districts, and the states themselves. The committee submitted its report on April 30th, 2016. The process was then taken up and ably led to its next stage by Sri Professor Prakash Javadekar, who took over as the Honorable Minister for Human Resource Development. The story of my involvement started during his regime with a call from the Honorable Minister and the subsequent constitution of the Committee for the Draft National Education Policy on June 24, 2017. Rigorous work with the very best of people who truly understand education, the reality and needs of our country, including the members of the committee and a wide range of individuals and thought leaders, converted this massive input into the country, given into a 484-page draft National Education Policy DNEP 2019. This was released on May 31st, 2019. Under the stewardship of Sri Ramesh Pokhriyal, Honorable Minister for Education, the process of finalization of the DNEP 2019, based on further inputs from the public consultations, led to the development of the final policy, the National Education Policy 2020, that was released to the nation on July 29, 2020. In a very real sense, the overall process of the development of NEP was unique. It brought together deep expertise and cutting-edge research, and with real democratic desires and needs of the Indian people. This is what makes the NEP truly transformative. Needless to emphasize, all this has been the result of the vision and extraordinary leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Modi ji. He has not only kept himself appraised of every step in the development of this policy, but has also critically gone through the details when the policy was presented to him and given invaluable suggestions. We all seen the kind of focus and energy that the PM is putting behind the NEP. This will have a crucial positive influence in the developmental trajectory of the country in the coming years. NEP 2020, anchored in and based on the 484-page document, NDNEP 2019, provides a clear roadmap and action dimensions for the transformation and reinvigoration of the education in India, so that by 2040, India has one of the best education systems in the world. Let us now look at the higher education in the NEP 2020. What are its visions and principles? The NEP 2020 is clear that higher education must enable the development of an enlightened, socially conscious, knowledgeable and skilled nation that can improve the lives of its people and construct and implement robust solutions to its own challenges. The policy also places adequate recognition to the transitional issues between school education and higher education, with the introduction of flexibility and choice of subjects of study to students through the semester system, and by removing the distinction between the curricular, co-curricular and extracurricular activities, and allowing the youngster to choose and also giving them multilingual capabilities. I am happy to say in this context that the preparation of the national curricular framework for school education and teacher education in particular are in progress, which will reflect the corresponding provisions of the school education as envisaged in the NEP 2020. The purpose of quality higher education is multidimensional. It's a critical contributor to sustainable livelihoods and economic development. It's also raised the key to improving overall human well-being and developing India as envisioned in the Constitution, a democratic, just, socially conscious self-aware, cultured and human nation with liberty, equality and a fraternal spirit and justice for all. Higher education is the development hub for ideas and innovation that help propel the country forward socially, culturally, aesthetically, scientifically, technologically, and ultimately economically. As India moves towards becoming a true knowledge society, higher education must form the basis for knowledge creation and innovation across disciplines, particularly cross-disciplinary research, which will be key to innovations for the 21st century and thereby contribute deeply to the growing national economy. The policy envisages higher education as enabling students to become well-rounded and develop optimally with flexibility and individuality built into their learning programs. Higher education must create vibrant communities of scholars and peers in which students can learn as per their interest. For this, higher education must provide broad-based multidisciplinary education and 21st century skills while developing specialized knowledge with true disciplinary rigor. Systems, structures, and processes of higher education must visibly demonstrate commitment to equity and inclusion, even as they energize this kind of higher education. Let me lay out the basic principles which guide the NEP 2020 in the higher education. Higher education, as I have mentioned earlier, must develop our youth to a broad-based and comprehensive manner, thus developing India into a true knowledge society with vibrant economy and equity and justice for all. This requires, the second point I would like to make, broad-based, truly multidisciplinary education. This calls for genuine integration of disciplines and fields. So at the undergraduate level, all students should receive this kind of liberal education without compromising on the discipline rigor. At the postgraduate level and beyond, there must be deep specialization. Such vibrant multidisciplinary education requires the development of large multidisciplinary higher education institutions. The size of institution matters because it is only at a critical mass of students and faculty can there be a vibrant learning community and the real possibility of offering multiple disciplines. To enable this, we will restructure our higher education institutions. Presently, we are recommended for 3 types, that is, research-intensive universities, teaching-intensive universities, and autonomous degree-giving colleges. The energy and vibrancy of such institutions will come from being fully empowered and autonomous. The institutions will all be independent, broad governed, and they will be governed by independent boards. To enable this, the regulatory structures and culture will go through a revolution. The Higher Education Commission of India, which we have proposed, with its 4 verticals, will regulate the higher education sector in a light and but tight manner. The centrality of research in our country and for our higher education system will be ensured by the development of the National Research Foundation. The National Research Foundation will play a pivotal role in transforming the culture of the research in the country. Our best ancient institutions like Nalanda or Takshashila, Vikramshila or Vallavi were multidisciplinary with thousands of students and worked deeply on interdisciplinary areas of teaching and research. The policy has taken its cue from that as well. Let us look at now the higher education in the context of systems, structures, processes. Some of the key specifics, I will bring it here. In NEP 2020, a new vision and architecture for higher education has been envisaged with large, well-resourced, vibrant, multidisciplinary institutions. The current 100,000 plus universities and 40,000 colleges will be consolidated with at least one multidisciplinary institution in or near every district. Consolidation means development for every institution through expanding itself and partnering with other institutions in the vicinity. A high-quality multidisciplinary education will enable students to grow professionally as well as personally. Thus, the kind of education enriches the life of students by giving them a perspective on life, work, and society. It enables them to think deeply and analytically and apply ideas, at least in one of the disciplines throughout the career in the life. It can enable people to learn the skills they need to be prepared for the livelihood, not in some mechanistic manner, but with a deeply creative way. A broad-based multidisciplinary education will be put in place at the undergraduate level for integrated, rigorous exposure to science, arts, humanities, mathematics, and professional fields. This would have the imaginative and flexible curricular structures, creative combinations of study, integration of professional and vocational education, and multiple entry and exit options. Focus will be on quality teaching, research, and community programs and engagement. All students shall be prepared with a set of general skills that are unlikely to be ever obsolete. This would include illustratively ability in the language and communication, working in diverse teams, critical reasoning, effective problem solving, information and data analysis, and these skills will prepare them for the world of the 21st century. These are skills which will not become outdated. This will, of course, require a new and imaginative curricular structure and high-capacity faculty. The undergraduate degree will be of either 3 or 4 years, and this all of you know, we've already seen this, with multiple exit entrance and entry options over this period. The 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor's program, however, shall be preferred option since it allows the opportunity to experience the full range of holistic and multidisciplinary education, in addition to a focus on the chosen major and minor as per the choices of the student. The student choice, flexibility, and mobility will be operationalized through the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, which will be aligned to the National Skills Qualification Framework. Institutions will have the flexibility to offer different designs of the postgraduate program as discussed in the policy. The University Grants Commission has taken some clear and definitive action to initiate this transformation, including the preparation of draft guidelines on the following: the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, Curricular Framework and Credit System for the 4-year undergraduate program, and transforming higher education institutions into multidisciplinary institutions. Regulations on the academic bank of credits, guidelines on multiple entry into and multiple exit from the programs, and guidelines on apprenticeship and internship embedded programs have been also completed. At this stage, I would like to digress a little. Obviously, the goal of the school and undergraduate education cannot be that the young minds to successfully solve problems that challenge professionals. But there are key elements of the process that professionals allow and which young students can and must be exposed to. This can only be done by broadening the single discipline approach. What are some of these key elements that our education system should focus on in this context? A critical element is case for the communication. We often have to solve broad, complex problems in terms of where each member brings to certain expertise to the table. Each of these members must be able to communicate effectively, not only with experts within their own disciplines, using a rich and shared discipline-specific vocabulary, but with others on the team who do not possess such a vocabulary. The language fluency is obviously a key element, and so too are critical and analytical reasoning, partly because these skills can help individuals to rapidly expand an initially narrowed share vocabulary and thereby communicate more effectively. Effective communication between humans goes well beyond vocabulary, of course. It includes an understanding of diverse cultures, perceptiveness, and the sensitivity to different disciplines. Thus, there are also a key elements. Naturally, the cooperation and collaboration are also crucial for effective teamwork. Exposure to multidisciplinary ways of thinking is a joy in itself for a youngster because it is strongly associated with their holistic mental development. A liberal arts education enables them to truly develop both sides of their brain, both the creative artistic side and the analytical side. No education system should deprive them of this joy or an opportunity to develop holistically. Apart from being a joy, it is increasingly clear that the 21st century will demand greater flexibility in ways of thinking, and this can only come through a greater exposure to diverse ways of thinking. You might argue that multiple disciplinary ways of thinking are encouraged even within our traditional disciplinary approach. After all, where would a physicist be without mathematics or a psychologist without biology? While this is generally true, there are clearly narrowly separated disciplines. They have often been long shared history with regular exchanges of ideas, as is in the case of physics and mathematics. It's clear that the key ingredient that must exist beyond the multidisciplinary approach is some kind of a degree of integration across the disciplines. Let me explain this with a concrete example. I consider a course that helps the students to understand music from many disciplinary perspectives. A physics professor might lead some lectures explaining the physics of sound waves, frequency, amplitude, etc. Next, a psychology professor might discuss the emotional aspects of music and how music could influence mood and behavior. A history professor could demonstrate how music changes over time, how it is shaped by events of the time, and how it can even influence some of these events. One can argue that such a course is multidisciplinary, but unless students have opportunities to integrate ideas from the various lectures in some meaningful way, for example, by completing a project or writing a detailed essay, for instance, then students are unlikely to compare the notes and to contrast these varying perspectives. These student activities can be crafted only when the different professors concerned with the various lectures coordinate how they plan their teacher class, including a directly referencing each other's lecture to help students to see the connections. I'm just giving one simple example of the integration concept that is to be brought about, and there are of course issues which are related not only interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, but also transdisciplinary. And when you come to transdisciplinary, it can even open up new areas of research and development and knowledge. So there are many variations on this. We did discuss this quite a lot in terms of how do we implement it in a class, and there are many models that need to be brought in. There are some very good methods that are already being followed by institutes like IIT and also many management institutions. I think it's important we study some of these methodologies and try to adopt it to the conditions from which the student is studying for a particular job or other kinds of purposes. The most important factor in the success of the higher education institutions is the quality and engagement of its faculty. Faculty must be empowered to do creative, innovative work in teaching, research, and service. All institutions, most especially those situated in disadvantaged geographies, must have adequate faculty across disciplines and fields. Work has just begun, I know, towards ensuring this, and it must continue with focus and speed. Regulation will be light but tight. We all know that we have read this, has been discussed often in very many meetings. This is in the context of financial probity and public spiritedness, standard setting, funding, accreditation, and regulation will be conducted by independent bodies to eliminate conflicts of interest. This has been one of the considerations. By independent bodies to eliminate conflicts, the regulatory system will have multiple dimensions of checks and balances, each working in tandem to ensure publicly spirited, high-quality institution. The primary mechanism to enable such a regulation will be accreditation. The current regulatory structures will be transformed through a single body, the Higher Education Commission of India, that will synergize regulation, accreditation, funding, and outcomes. And this will be through four verticals: the single regulator, the National Higher Education Regulatory Council, the National Accreditation Council, the Higher Education Grants Council, and the General Education Council, respectively. Work on the detailed structure and processes of this new Higher Education Commission of India has already begun in right earnest. It's effective governance and leadership that enables the creation of a culture of excellence and innovation in higher educational institutions. The common feature of all the world-class institutions globally, including India, has indeed been the existence of a strong self-governance and outstanding merit-based appointments of institutional leaders. Some of the elements related to this I would like to say: the institutional governance will be based on autonomy, academic, administrative, and financial. Each higher education institution will be governed by an independent board of governors. Each institution will develop an institutional development plan to access its own progress and to plan the achievement of its goals. Draft guidelines on institutional development plan for higher education institutions have been developed in addition to guidelines for establishing research and development cells and establishing an office for international affairs within institutions. They are also ready and has been recently issued by the University Grants Commission. Research and innovation will be catalyzed and expanded across the country. The National Research Foundation will be the linchpin for this. The National Research Foundation will not only foster and facilitate research and innovation across fields, but will be also the engine for transformation of a research culture across the entire spectrum of institutions, particularly the state universities. The Indian space program is a persuasive example of a scientific endeavor that has today become an instrument for wide-ranging applications, particularly in the social context. It's also an excellent example, case point for applications of systems concepts for the execution of a complex multidisciplinary task. From humble beginnings and low investment, the space program today has grown into a major multidimensional national science and technology endeavor that includes science, applications, technology, research and innovation, international collaboration and cooperation, and aspects of self-reliance with implications for PM's Atmanirbhar. All this has been made possible by quality educational and research programs in science and engineering provided by many of the higher educational institutions of this country. A good example of the multiplicative effect of an education, research and innovative program, and NRF is expected to consolidate and expand the related concepts. What I want to say is the type of experience we have got, whether it is in space, whether it is in atomic energy, whether it is in the DRDO, and even in many of the other scientific departments, we have necessarily the understanding of the management of the research programs and management, but there is a strong need to introduce this in the university system and considerably increase the number of researchers per lakh, the production of papers, and also to make sure that we establish the right type of linkages between the pure research, the applied research, the translational research, and the research ultimately. So if we are not connected this up in the four of these elements, in the overall system of India's space program, we would not have been able to use a satellite for looking at the groundwater. So that is the message I would like to say in the context of how we have ourselves created these kind of capabilities and systems and we need to expand this much further. The NRF is a facilitator for those kind of requirements of the future, and especially now that we have this Atmanirbhar project with the Prime Minister, he is spearheading. The Office of the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Prime Minister, the Department of Science and Technology, the Ministry of Education, and other key stakeholders have paid special attention to the development of NRF. It has already been endorsed in the Union budget by the Honorable Finance Minister, and this is where it stands. I am sure that in the coming months, we will have the germination of these ideas into a kind of a core activity which will then grow up the expectation that we have laid down as what we call as a National Research Foundation. Technology in education will be appropriately integrated into all levels of education to improve classroom process, support teacher professional development, enhance educational access for disadvantaged groups, and streamline educational planning, administration, and management. New regulations on open distance learning and online programs have already been developed, and I am aware of the UGC's initiative in this connection too. The policy strongly emphasizes a significant increase in the access to equitable and inclusive higher education for youth from disadvantaged communities through a comprehensive range of measures. Increased support in every way, financial, academic, and socio-emotional, is critical for this to happen. Integrating work and employability skills within the mainstream curriculum as per the policy is an important way to do this. We must continue to work towards making our admission process, our life on campuses, our curricula, and our classroom processes fully inclusive. This is all the glimmer of a good beginning. However, the task ahead of us is gigantic. The task that we have at hand is no less than a revolution of the existing systems, structures, and processes. Changes will have to be made in a coherent, meaningful, and carefully planned manner. Piecemeal changes will only delay attainment of the envisaged goals. It is not only merely the changes, but the approach and strategy of those that will have to be carefully thought of and executed, both at the system and at the institutional level. We are in the critical stage of implementing the policy. Quick decisions on major matters and monitoring impact on the ground are critical things which we need to look into. As we have already seen, some implementation has begun with good initiatives taken by the UGC and AICTE. Some national institutions like IITs and some public and private universities have also begun implementing aspects of the policy. With the present momentum we are witnessing, I am sure that the progress in the coming months and the years would be such that we should be able to see very satisfying signs of these good transformatory changes among the institutions. There are cultural factors, I want to say this, and many legacy factors that can be changed only at the institutional level, and this needs to be recognized and appropriate changes effected, thus bringing a transformation in the overall functioning of these institutions. A perspective of the final landscape of higher education, as well as the detailed roadmap, must consider how the transition will take place. This cohesive approach must inform the actions of all the stakeholders, and the will and commitment for the journey ahead must manifest in all decisions. There can be no better occasion than this, where the leaders of the higher education have collected to reaffirm our commitment to the speedy and thoughtful implementation of the NEP, which then will be our singular contribution to transforming our nation. I am really glad that this is being led by the Honorable Minister of Education, Sri Dharmendra Pradhanji. His leadership is inspiring and is leading a truly rigorous and inclusive effort for a comprehensive implementation of the NEP in 2020, both in school education and the higher education. Convening this meeting is a clear indication of his approach of how we will need to work together to implement the NEP in this period. I have known Sri Dharmendra Pradhan Ji for some time, and his commitment in the landscape. You know better. I am really, both in the education. Convening this meeting is a clear indicator of this approach of how we will need to work together to implement the NEP in this period. I have known Dharmendra Pradhan Ji, I will return back to this, for some time. And he's, unfortunately, it is missing. The thing, he has been a very, very close associate when we worked together in Rajya Sabha. He had this knack of seeing the multiple dimensions of a problem. He used to raise these questions in the standing committee and so on. At that time itself, I felt that he has this vision. He has the necessary grip with any complex issue, whether it is connected issues of science, technology, and social sciences. And he used to look at it in a total perspective. Today, heading this institution of education in this country, he certainly is well qualified simply because the quality that he has often displayed over years certainly is brought to bear in full force and with renewed rigor in the context of the education of this country. I am sure under his leadership and under the overall vision and direction of the Prime Minister, we have a very unique moment in the history of this country to take in the education into a form of a knowledge society, a vibrant knowledge society, which will provide India its rightful position in the Committee of Nations. I use this opportunity to greet all of you once more. I know you have a long agenda, not only for today evening, but also for tomorrow and day after. I'm sure, and all the areas of the agenda that you have identified in the context of the discussion certainly are the ones that will be providing the complete story with regard to how we want to take the higher education forward. And I'm sure with the best of the people from the country drawn into this meeting and the deliberation that will follow and well-structured way in which the agenda has been put together by the ministry as well as by the UGC, we are in for a very major transformatory activity in the coming months and years towards fulfilling our dream of a vibrant India. Thank you very much.